YouTube? What's happening? Mike here, and today we're going to be examining the second best of the Regis, I would say, that get released with the Ancient Origins set. So this deck is going to revolve around the Registeel, which has a pretty cool attack, the Forbidden Iron Hammer attack, which pretty much forces our opponent's Pokemon to discard an energy card attached to them, provided that they are an EX Pokemon. So all of the Regis that got released in the Ancient Origins set are pretty much anti-EX Pokemon, which is pretty cool though, because they're very effective at dealing with those EX Pokemon for the most part. So Registeel has a very solid 120 HP, so it often takes 2 hits to get knocked out, unless of course our opponent has had enough time to set up all of those energy cards. So that's definitely an added little bonus. Iron Head is a really weak attack. We're probably not going to be making use of it whatsoever. Extremely unreliable, so I'm not really going to discuss it beyond that. We also have an alternative attacker in our deck, which is going to be the Heatran. It has the Steel Drop and the Steam Blast attack. Now, Steel Drop is most effective when there is a Stadium card in play, allowing us to hit for 40 additional damage. And then of course we have the Steam Blast attack, which allows us to hit for 130 damage, which is pretty much enough to knock out the bulk of non-EX Pokemon, which we will be encountering. If it's not, a Muscle Band should do the trick. Now, Heatran is our alternative attacker in case we're facing a non-EX type of deck. That's of course where the Heatran really tends to pull its weight. So we are running 2 copies of this respective Pokemon in our deck, and then we're running a 4/4 Bronzong line. The Meta Link's ability just really helps us propagate our deck strategy. Really helpful. Allows us to repeatedly grab onto those steel energy cards from our discard pile and then latch them on to our Pokemon. So yeah, that way we're running quite a few Bronzongs. I feel like 4/4 might actually be a little bit overkill. You guys could potentially cut down on it, but just for the sake of consistency, I have decided to run 4 of each type. Now, since our deck is going to be focusing on energy disruption, we'll be running a total of 4 copies of the Crushing Hammer. So, of course, this is just as effective on EX decks as they are on non-EX decks. So, if we manage to flip a heads, we're able to discard an energy card attached to one of our opponent's Pokemon. We, of course, have the Enhanced Hammer, allowing us to discard an energy card attached to one of our opponent's Pokemon. There's no questions asked. I mean, there's no flip coin or anything like that. So, Enhanced Hammer definitely is better than the Crushing Hammer in certain instances, especially when we are facing decks that do run a lot of special energy cards. Of course, we also have a single copy of the Team Flare Grunt. So that's quite a bit of energy disruption, and of course the Registeel is a built-in energy disruption machine whenever it does come across any EX decks. So there's going to be a lot of energy disruption, and we may actually see quite a few rage quits whenever making use of this deck. We have a total of 2 copies of the Battle Compressor. This is just to allow us to get some of these steel energy cards into that discard pile, maybe even one of our supporter cards as well, which we could potentially grab out and then make use of using the VS Seeker. But Battle Compressor is mainly going to be used to get those steel energy cards in that discard pile. We have, of course, a total of 3 copies of the Double Colors Energy because most of our Pokemon can make use of it as well. So I felt like 3 was enough. 4 might be a little bit on the overkill side of things, especially since we would like to make use of that Metal Link's ability. We have a total of 2 Muscle Bands, very helpful, allows us to increase the total damage output of our Pokemon. Again, could make the difference between that Heatran performing that 1-hit knockout or potentially having to attack a second time, which could allow our opponent to retaliate and knock out that Heatran. Of course, Muscle Band will also allow the Forbidden Iron Hammer to hit for 90 damage, which I think is a pretty solid number, because I mean 70 damage, it would take us a total of 3 turns to knock out an EX Pokemon, whereas of course with the Muscle Band it only takes us a total of 2 turns. So Muscle Band really does pull its weight in this deck. Now there's an option of 2 different Stadium cards to be run in this deck. We have the Silent Lab and the Steel Shelter, both of which I think are really solid. But since we've gone for a disruptive sort of deck, Silent Lab really seems to work a lot better. I mean, it shuts down Shaman EXs, things like that, which is precisely why we're not running any Shaman EXs in our own deck. And I do sort of want the price card exchange ratio to always be a 1 whenever any of our Pokemon do get knocked out. Those Shaman EXs could be a little bit of a liability, and Silent Lab just a fantastic Stadium card. So we'll be running a total of 4 copies of it. You guys could again mix in a couple of Steel Shelters in there as well, but I felt like Silent Lab is doing more than a good enough job on its own. We do see quite a few switch cards because unfortunately there's no more Caldeo EX, so we'll be running 1 Escape Rope and 2 switches. I mean, our our Steel Pokemon are very bulky, so these cards definitely do tend to pay off. We have a single copy of the Sacred Ash in case we'd like to recycle some of our attackers, potentially even our Bronzongs. Sacred Ash is there to allow us to make use of such an option, so we will be running a single copy of that in our deck. And then we have 4 Ultra Balls to grab the Pokemon that we need. Moving on to our supporters, guys, we have an Ace Trainer, 4 Professor Birches, and 4 Sycamores. Of course, the Team Flare Grunt, which I discussed earlier, 2 Lysanders to lure out any of the opponent's bench Pokemon, and a total of 2 VS Seekers to allow us to make use of those supporter cards all over again. So with that, we're going to go and find ourselves an opponent. And now, of course, this deck is by far the most effective against EX decks, but it can be just as effective against non-EX decks. Don't count it out just yet, because again, that Heatran can hit for quite a bit of damage. It's actually a pretty solid and impressive sort of Pokemon. I absolutely do love including it in these types of decks. So again, we're just looking for an opponent. This is actually a deck that can perform quite well against Night Merge decks once we do ultimately have those Bronzong set up. I mean, those Bronzongs are of course very, very important, because once we get that sort of energy acceleration going on, then we'll be able to take prize cards at the same rate as our opponent will be able to take prize cards. So it's definitely something nice. Alright, so we found ourselves our first opponent. Looks like it's going to be a fighting and psychic type deck. Most likely it's going to be a Primal Groudon EX deck, just based on that coin, I'm assuming. The fighting type deck, yeah, so we're going to see that Primal Groudon EX right away. So alright, so we should be able to disrupt it quite a bit, and we're going to see that Wobbuffet as well. We can shut down that Wobbuffet special ability though, so shouldn't be too problematic. We're going to see our opponent starting off with the Groudon EX. My goodness, we have absolutely nothing useful in this hand just yet, guys. Okay, so we have a Registeel. Very, very happy about that. I mean, that Rip Claw attack could potentially knock out that Bronzor if our opponent gets a Muscle Band latched onto it as well. So I'm actually going to go and attach a Fighting Energy card onto that, a Steel Energy card onto that Registeel. You know what, I'm not going to switch into it just yet, because the Rip Claw could potentially get rid of a energy card attached to that Registeel. So I'm actually going to go right ahead and end the turn. Going to hold off on the Silent Lab just temporarily. I'm probably going to bring it out soon. Hopefully our Bronzor is able to survive. Hopefully, I mean, I don't think our opponent's really going to be running a whole lot of Muscle Bands. I mean, Primal Groudon EX is just a massive, massive bulky Pokemon that absolutely ravages anything it can encounter. So we are going to see that Primal Groudon EX make its appearance. I'm going to go and lay down the Silent Lab. Let's actually go right ahead and switch in to the Registeel. I'm going to go and attach the Muscle Band. At this point, guys, what I'm really, really hoping for is the what's it called? The double colors energy. I do want to start getting rid of some energy cards attached to our opponent's Pokemon. Our opponent may have made a mistake in running this Primal Groudon EX. Definitely think the other one is much, much better. So let's go actually and make use of that Sycamore. And of course, we're not going to get the double colors energy. But that Primal Groudon EX won't be able to attack just yet either, unless we do see some Mega Turbos. So I'm going to go and bring out one Bronzong. I'm going to go and lay out a Bronzor as well. Let's actually go right ahead and get rid of 2 Sycamores. Temporarily, I'm going to go and bring out a Registeel and attach a Steel Energy card to it from that discard pile. So let's go right ahead and attach that. It's unfortunate we can't attack just yet, but I mean, we may have flipped a single tail, so we might not have even been able to hit for any damage whatsoever. So I mean, it's still really too early to determine what is going to happen, but I think we're going to have a good game. I mean, that Primal Groudon EX does require quite a few energy cards to be able to attack, and we should definitely be able to take advantage of that. So we're going to see an Ultra Ball. But if it's a Shaman EX or something like that, which I don't think it is, because I believe our opponent is only running Fighting and Psychic type Pokemon, I mean, it doesn't really matter, because we had that Silent Lab out at play anyway. So it looks like it's going to be an additional Groudon EX. Our opponent actually going to get rid of that Scorched Earth. I'm a little bit surprised he did. Well, I guess it makes sense, because he wanted to make use of that Sycamore. Alright, we're going to see that Wobbuffet. Again, we should be able to nullify Wobbuffet for the most part. Just again, showing us the importance of that Silent Lab, which I feel like is really, really pulling its weight in this respective deck. So I will be making use of the Battle Compressor. I think I'm going to go and get rid of 2 Steel Energy cards and send those into that discard pile. Hopefully I can just repeatedly start getting rid of those energy cards attached to those Primal Groudon EXs. Okay, looks like our opponent is running a mix of both Primal Groudon EXs. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And yes, we're going to finally start getting rid of some of those energy cards. So let's go and use that Metal Links and use that to get an additional Steel Energy card onto that Registeel. Now, normally Primal Groudon EX, the reason why it's so powerful is because it's immune to cards such as, of course, the Crushing Hammers, the Enhanced Hammers, things like that, but it's not immune to our Registeel's attack, so this is potentially one of the most ideal matchups we could ever hope for. We're going to go and look for that Sycamore, use it, and alright, so we have a Crushing Hammer. Yeah, so I will absolutely be making use of that. We are going to get a Tails. That's okay. I'm not particularly worried about that. I mean, I could... let's actually go and get rid of the Sacred Ash And the steel energy card from our hand, I'm going to go right ahead and look for a Bronzong. Again, Bronzong is just a really nice Pokemon to run in this type of deck. We're going to go and make use of that Metal Links, attach a steel energy card onto our bench Registeel. Let's go and make use of Forbidden Iron Hammer, 90 damage, and get rid of one of those fighting energy cards. So we're going to make life very difficult for our opponent. I mean, there's definitely a possibility, of course, that he could attack before we're able to get rid of all those energy cards again, because so we're probably going to see a Mega Turbo. That Karina is also going to allow our opponent to look for one more Groudon EX. Maybe a Groudon Spirit Link? I don't know, but most likely it is going to be the Mega Turbo, yes. So unfortunately that Registeel is going to lose its life, and our Silent Lab is going to go in that discard pile as well. So I may actually hold off on bringing out some additional Silent Labs, guys, but I'll definitely be bringing out this Registeel temporarily and taking advantage of the Forbidden Iron Hammer attack. So let's go right ahead, make use of the Professor Birch's observation. We are going to get a Tails. That's okay. That's something I can live with. So let's go right ahead and attach a Steel Energy card onto that Registeel. Look for an additional Steel Energy card and attach that onto our Registeel as well. And then we're going to go right ahead and make use of Forbidden Iron Hammer. 70 damage, and that is one more energy card in our opponent's discard pile. Unfortunately, our opponent is attaching energy cards faster than we're able to get rid of them. But I mean, at the very least, when we do ultimately knock out that Primal Groudon EX, we'll be able to take 2 prize cards, whereas our opponent will only be able to take a single prize card. We are going to see that Professor's Letter. Again, our opponent is just desperately trying to repeatedly attach those energy cards, because I mean, the moment he lets up, it might just be a little bit too late. So I actually maybe should have made use of that Ultra Ball to grab onto a Heatran, guys, because it could hit for 130 damage, but maybe attacking with the benched Registeel might be the way to go as well. We're going to see that Focus Sash, pretty much a useless attachment. None of our Pokemon can hit anywhere near the one-hit knockout range, so we're going to go right ahead and bring out the Registeel, guys. And alright, so we do have the Team Flare Grunt, which again would actually work against this Primal Groudon EX, because it's not the one with the other ability, but I do think I would like to get ourselves a brand new hand. I'll definitely won't be bringing out the Silent Lab just yet, so let's actually go and get rid of these cards. Actually, sorry, Heatran is the card that I would like to bring out at this point. Let's go and make use of that Sycamore for a brand new hand. And alright, so we do have the Double Colorless Energy. We'll definitely be able to get rid of, at the very least, one energy card attached to it, but let's go and spam some hammers as well. So that is going to be one heads. We do want to ensure that our Registeel hopefully survives. Yeah, so I don't think that Primal Groudon EX will be attacking anytime soon. Let's go and make use of Metal Links. You know what, let's actually go and power up that Registeel. I think that's sort of the better option. It's unfortunate that we already got rid of that Sacred Ash, but it's okay. I mean, our Heatran is definitely a very viable attacker as well. Forbidden Iron Hammer, 70 damage. That is a single energy attached, a single energy that is remaining on that Primal Groudon EX. And our opponent already sent 2 more Primal Groudon EXs in that discard pile, so he may have actually gotten rid of all of his Primal Groudon EXs, and that could make life very difficult for our opponent. So we are going to see that Heart Charm getting latched on to that Wobbuffet. But again, I have the Silent Lab in my hand, so Wobbuffet isn't going to be too problematic, and I have the Enhanced Hammer as well, so that's going to allow us to get rid of that what's it called, the Strong Energy card attached on to that Groudon EX. Unless our opponent is going to look for, okay, so we're going to see that Karina, but does he have one more Primal Groudon EX? I'm actually not sure how many Primal Groudon EXs our opponent is running, so it definitely could be a possibility, but it could be another one with the Theta Max ability as opposed to the Primal Groudon EX with the Delta Barrier, I believe, sorry, Omega Barrier ability. There we go. So we're going to see that Karina. I don't think our opponent has any more Primal Groudon EXs, to be honest. I actually didn't take a look at what our opponent's first card was. Okay, so it looks like there wasn't any more fighting Pokemon our opponent was able to grab. I mean, if he is running for Primal Groudon EXs, then that very last one is prized. So that's very unfortunate for our opponent. We're going to see that Mega Turbo, and I don't think this Primal Groudon EX should be able to attack, so I'm not really sure why we saw that Mega Turbo, but I'm not complaining. Let's go right ahead and get rid of that energy card. We're going to go and make use of the Bronzong special ability, attach a Steel Energy card onto that Registeel, and then we're going to go right ahead and attach a Steel Energy card. Okay, so it looks like we are going to see the Rage Quit. Definitely something that we should expect. Let's take a quick look at the game stats. I actually have to get going, guys, so I'm gonna cut this video short, so I'm sorry, but I think you guys have a pretty good understanding of what this deck is capable of. So yeah, we only hit for 230 damage, but we definitely got rid of quite a lot of energy cards. We managed to flip a total of 2 heads and 2 tails. Anyways, that is gonna be it. Again, guys, really sorry, but I do have to get going right now, so I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.